Well, like they said, we were able to go to Israel, something we've been wanting to do for a super long time. And we've had several people say, hey, when are you going to show us your pictures? So here we are. Israel has a great, I guess, a great drawing for so many people. When we were there was thousands and thousands of people from all over the world drawn to it. And their kind of their mantra is, you are welcome in this place. So we left Houston and we flew to Frankfurt, Germany. This is us packed up before we were ready to go. That's what we took. There's a picture of the airport in Frankfurt. The worst security I've ever been through in any airport ever, Frankfurt, Germany. It's a picture of us when we landed. There was, I think we counted them up, there were 7 different churches represented in our small 32 people group. This is right as you get into the airport in Tel Aviv. That's our guide, George. So the tour group that we went with, or the tour company, is called Signature Tours. And this guide here, he was our guide. We had one guide and one bus driver, and then we just had the 32 people on a bus. This is the first night. We stayed in a town called Netanya, which is north on the Mediterranean Sea, north of Tel Aviv. And Netanya was founded by the guy who owns Macy's department stores. Jews themselves control 75, 80% of the world's diamond trade. 65% of those diamonds are cut and produced out of Netanya. So it's a very affluent area. This is from our balcony the next morning. That's the Mediterranean Sea. I've heard about it, read about it in books. It is, the pictures don't do it justice. It is gorgeous.
I told Thomas if he wants to move there, I guess I would.
Yeah. All right, so this would be the beginning of the tour, so to speak. We went to Caesarea Maritima, and this is a national park in the Haifa district. This is in northern Israel. This is an amphitheater built by Herod. So 2 Herods talked about. You've got Herod Antipas, Herod the Great, however you want to call him in Israel, they call him Herod the Crazy. He was, mad and got eaten with worms, but he was an amazing, amazing builder, and he jumped up the infrastructure in the country dramatically. So when we were talking, George, our guide, would give us a historical and give us a rundown of everywhere we went and what we were seeing. But also, he is a Christian. And he would look at the places where we were through a Christian lens. And when he was talking, what I heard is this Coliseum, this stadium, this was our cell phone. He built this so when you have people under subjugation, they were under Roman control. He was a pet or a dog for Rome, and his job was to keep the Jews under subjugation and keep them quiet and happy. So he built this arena with spectacles and all kinds of shows and stuff to keep their mind off of how bad their lives really were, and just to kind of keep them. So I thought about it. I said, well, this is like our cell phone. They put all this stuff on us for us to watch and games and stuff like that instead of paying attention to what's important, what's going on in the world. So every time throughout the pictures, if you see something like this, this is a replica. The original, if it's something nice enough, the original's in the museum in Jerusalem. And so this is just leaving the amphitheater and walking around, so just be a bunch of cool pictures. That's the Mediterranean, of course. This right here is Herod's palace. He actually built a palace, and he hauled a bunch of material out, and he built it out over the water. And so this is seawater now, but before he had it walled up better, and this was a natural swimming pool. When I say you can look and it looks like a pile of rocks, it does. But if you've ever if you've ever done any kind of construction, or just even if you haven't, just seeing all the piles, you can see how elaborate and immaculate this place was.
Right there, that's all mosaic. You can still see parts of the mosaic floor that he had there, and it just went straight out. The whole thing was kind of like a pier sort of, to be able to be over the ocean. It was really neat.
This right here, we had a young lady on our group that put the group together, and if you can see this small arch right there, this is at the seaport that Herod built. There wasn't a natural seaport. He built it, and this is where, when Paul and everybody would leave and go to Rome, this is where they were. The young lady that was on our group that put this trip together had gotten a free trip the year before, so she came back. This was not excavated when she was there the year and a half before. That arch right there is where Paul sat awaiting transport to Rome. It was there for like 2 years. So this is Paul's cell. This, kind of like right now in Central Texas and a lot of places, especially where I grew up, water is everything. So this right here is a side view of the aqueducts. They brought water in, fresh water. Of course, they're on the Mediterranean, but they needed fresh water. And you can see the channel up there where those people are standing at the top. That's an aqueduct that was 7 miles that brought all their fresh water into Caesarea. That one went from north of Galilee over there there was a mountain spring, and I can't remember what it's called. There was so much information, just every minute, just hard to keep it all going, okay? This is Mount Carmel. And all these places are super close together, especially in a bus. So this guy here is standing on somebody and has his sword out. Anybody want to guess what that is? That's Elijah. This is the place where Elijah baited the gods or the priests of Baal. Remember when they were in a drought, and the Jewish king had married the woman Jezebel, and she got him off course. And so Elijah came and he said, "Hey, why don't you guys let's have a contest." So he had a contest, and he said, "Y'all call fire from your gods and burn up this sacrifice." And then he brought all the water in and everything after they'd been doing it and cutting themselves with knives. God sent fire down, consumed the deal, and then Elijah and the king and everybody went and they killed every single solitary one of the prophets, the false prophets of Baal. This is on Mount Carmel. That's a Druish church. There's like 145,000 Druze in the area. You can't convert to it. It's something you're born into. And they maintain this site. Druze are a people that follow the father-in-law. They put up on high the father-in-law of Moses, Jethro. And they're not Muslims. They're not Christians. They're Druze. And they are, if you care, they chose to be part of the IDF, which is the Israeli Defense Force, so they can serve in the army, and a lot of times they're in the special forces. They're pretty skilled people. This is an overlook looking down. That building that we saw was off to the right, so everybody was able to walk up there, and this is a great overlook of the valley. That valley there is very, very important. And we were coming into their dry season, but it's still, this northern part of Israel, the northern district, is extremely green and lush, and I was not expecting that.
So this is Armageddon, but we're going to see the other side of this on the next deal. So we're looking at it from one angle, and then in a minute we'll look at it from the other side.
All right, so this is Mount Precipice. This is that same valley. Mount Precipice is the exact location. Sometimes when we were there, they were like, "This is where we think this happened," or whatever. This is one of those exact locations. Now, this rock, that rock, we don't know. But this is where, when Christ first claimed that he was the I Am, the Messiah, in the synagogue in Nazareth, they walked him out, and they were going to throw him off this. And everybody was all weird about, I stood up there, but I didn't take a camera, but on the back side of this, you're thinking, well, if they're going to push him off, how's it going to kill him? Well, if you look down, I mean, it is and die or not die, they would take the easy road back, and somebody couldn't run off after they were pushed off. So even if it didn't kill them, they'd walk down there and kill them. So this is that. This was an amazing, I mean, to think this is where people were going to kill Christ, people that he grew up with were going to kill Christ for his assertion of being the Messiah. And this was early on. Remember, this is early on in his ministry. So here's your farmland. I mean, Israel is a leading, I would say, a leading country in agriculture around the world. They have people from all over the world come and study agriculture with them, and their use of the limited water that they have and the production rates are absolutely mind-blowing from what we read.
They produce almost all of their own food.
They do produce every bit of their they can self-sustain themselves. They need absolutely zero imports. Because of their torrid military past and the fact that most of the world hates them, we don't even have a visa stamp on our passport. They have decided that they will give you just a little piece of paper that you put inside your passport while you're there, because they don't want to put an Israeli stamp on your passport, because they know that if you go and travel around the rest of the world, you'll get grief for being from, not even being from, but even visiting Israel. So they act like you've never been there. That's a service to you, which I was disappointed because I wanted it. I told the guy, I said, anywhere I can't go because I've been to Israel, I don't want to go anyway. So this is looking down off that. This valley is the valley of Armageddon, or the valley of Megiddo. And that's where the battle of Armageddon will take place. And just like a million other things when I got there, I was blown away because the Bible says that during the battle, the blood will flow to the horse's bridle. So I was thinking a narrow deal so that, it can pull and go up. That's how many people will die in that deal. This right here, you're standing there and you think, all right, we're going to go to one place and we're going to see this one thing. And the guide's like, and this happened there, and that happened there, and that happened there. This group of trees right here, if you go back to the Old Testament, Deborah the judge, and they had a battle going on, and this king was standing there scared for the Jews, for Israel. And she said, we've got to go out there and beat those people. He said, oh, I don't know. He said, well, you go with us. And she said, I won't go with you, but she said, I'll go if I can command the army. So she goes. They absolutely wipe them out, decimate them. And then the king that they were fighting of, Syria, he fled. And he goes and knocks on this lady's door and says, hey, can I hide here? Can I hide here? She goes, yeah, that's okay. That was in those group of trees right there. And then she waits for him to go to sleep. She sneaks in there. She takes a stent pole and drives his head and plows him into the ground right there and kills him. That happened right there. We're standing on the Mount of Precipice, but just right there. I mean, and you'll see that throughout the deal. So, this is Nazareth. We didn't go into Nazareth, but we kind of just skirted around the outside. But this Mount of Precipice is where we're standing, and this is looking back over to Nazareth. So, where his synagogue was, they just walked him up there. Okay, so this mountain here, this is Mount Tabor. So you're standing on the mount where he almost was killed, where they were going to execute him for his assertion of being the Messiah, and over there to that mountain, and that is Mount Tabor. That is the Mount of Transfiguration. So that's where he transfigured in front of his disciples. Now we're to the Sea of Galilee. It's big. It's a lot bigger than I thought it was. This is at night. That's the hotel we stayed in. It's funny, not that this is important, but the first hotel we stayed at in Antioch had the largest balcony of any hotel I've ever been in. It was from there all the way to this wall. This one had the smallest one. You could walk out, and if you close the door, you could stand there. So it's two different hotels, but two different balconies. But it was gorgeous at night. There was a bunch of, a bunch of vendors, almost like a little carnival at night, all up and down the shore. It was very lively. It was neat. This is in the morning. This is the sunrise.
That picture was taken at the end of that little thing. That's where that picture that we took.
Oh, yeah.
That's
We
where
were
we
standing on the end of that island. Danny never saw any sunrises, so we know that she didn't take this picture. So that that boat out there is a what do you call it? A model or a recreation of a boats they would have had back in the 1st century antiquity, and they use them as, of course, tourism boats now. Somebody took this picture of food.
Food. There was tons of food. One thing we did realize is the morning is where you're going to get your cheese. There's no meat. Most of the hotels we stayed at were kosher, which means they don't serve dairy and meat at the same time. So it took us several days to figure out what was going on, but
You could get pizza in the morning, but that was it.
but it's just cheese pizza.
Yeah, just cheese pizza.
But at night you could there'd be all kinds of meat, but no cheese, no dairy. One night he wanted coffee with when we figured it out was he wanted coffee with his dessert. And so we had to, at night you had to buy your coffee. In the morning they had machines everywhere. But she's like, you can't take that over to back to the
She
thing.
said I could go to the bar with my dessert and drink my coffee, but you couldn't
So
take
then
your coffee
finally
to the
it started
table.
making sense.
was like, oh,
What
okay.
they were doing, it was kosher.
And that was just because the coffee could have milk in it, even though I drink it black. So we worshiped together that first evening in that hotel room. It was a great time, and then we started having breakout sessions at night because people would ask questions and try to get a little bit more of a bearing on where we were and what we'd seen. Because, I mean, it was just like from place to place to place. All right, this is probably one of the Sea of Galilee and Tel Dan. This is in the occupied area of no, this is in the occupied area of the Golan Heights. Golan Heights. And this is some area that Israel is, quote unquote, occupying. And remember, President Trump said that they're not occupying it. This is their deal. And it caused outrage around the international community. But they have it right now and they control it. So ton of crops, beautiful flowers growing out of rocks. I mean, you could see the blessing on this place. This is in Tel Dan. So if you think about the 12 tribes of Israel, Dan or tribe of Benjamin is the far north, and this is where they were. So this water is huge, flowing. I mean, we had some videos, but they didn't work in the slideshow. But I mean, it is just going and going and
It's
going
loud. It
and
was
gorgeous,
very loud.
loud. It was neat. And then this is a walk up to that, and we'll get to some important sites. She made me take a lot of pictures. Stand here, take a picture. So that's what it would have really have looked like in the time of the Israelite kingdom. So this is what it would have looked like, and then you'll see what's left. Obviously, we're talking thousands and thousands of years. So this is what's left. Right here would have been the gate, and that's where like Solomon and different people would have sat. The I don't want to say court, but back then they had elders or city officials would sit out front, and they would handle problems or disputes, and they would sit out there for certain hours of the day, and they would handle stuff. And this is the gate to that ancient city. Yeah, there you go.
Said the city gates like the city hall.
There was a lot of walking, but it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be more.
And there were little rooms. They're like, this is where you would have stayed, like if you were a guest, because they had a whole entrance before you could actually go into what would have been the city itself. So it's kind of a protective area that, but.
And this is the high place. This is where they would have gone for worship.
And this is where when they started not following God. These were the pagan worship sites.
So everything is layered. You'll see, instead of moving our guide, super nice guy, but he would say, you look at all this, and there's nothing modern there right now. But instead of removing all that and starting from scratch, like on a pad, like you'll see out, down the road here, just a dirt and then a pad, they just build on top. So there'll be a layer of Abraham's age, and then over and over and over. And so when you do go down into some of the sites back, you have to go down underground. But
and that's an olive tree, which I grew to just love. The olives were not in season, but they were amazing trees.
So this next picture I thought was neat, and I do like the history of stuff and military. So those right there are trenches for warfare. And the next slide will show you the countries, but this dirt road right there, that's it. I mean, that's the border. We were standing at the very north. That's Lebanon and that's Syria. And they always attack Israel from the north, except, of course, when Egypt attacks. But, they have all these countries. It's small in size, and, of course, since it's only been a country since 1948. And They've been attacked repeatedly since they started their country. And of course, years ago, all throughout the Bible, there was battles and wars over stuff. And the interesting thing that I found out was that because of the British Empire's power and advancement, they were asked to come and draw borders between countries all through the colonial period. And what they would do is they would say that, all right, Israel, your border is that dirt road. Syria, your border's over here. Lebanon, your border, and cross the border so that they could make other countries fight it out, and then they would go in and take the spoils. So there's been a contested border for years and years because Britain drew the borders a long, long time ago.
And especially like over there in the Syria area, you can't walk anywhere. They've got a lot of times they've got double fences because there's landmines still everywhere. So you don't go on a hike.
Yeah, you don't go walking around. You don't go walking around up there in that the Golan Heights area. So this is right close to Tel Dan. This is Abraham's Gate, built in 1750 BCE, and it was probably the original gate to Tel Dan. And then, of course, as things happened, they moved away.
But Abraham only went here to rescue Lot, so it's not.
Yeah, he didn't ever live here. He just
that.
went there to get Lot one time when he was in trouble. Every day they fed us lunch, and sometimes this day in the Golan Heights was more military presence than anywhere else that we saw. They use going down the road. They'll leave a bombed out tank, a Syrian tank or a Lebanese tank, and just as a reminder to those countries, of past battles that they've lost. So you're driving through, and there's a ton of military presence. Well, when they went to lunch, they went to some place, and I didn't want to go, so I just sat outside and walked around, and I got to talking to an Israeli Defense Force soldier, and we were talking, and he was up there, in that area, and we got to talking, and he, of course, mentioned Trump and how he's the greatest president Israel's ever had, and I kind of laughed. I said, well, he's one of our better ones too, but they're very fond of it, and we got to discussing things, and he said, yeah, a lot of people think that we shouldn't have this area of the Golan Heights. And I just laughed, and I said, a bunch of Christian Americans where I'm from, I said, we believe that you guys own it all. And he looked at me, he was funny, and I said, yeah, from the covenant, that this is all your land, and that we would support you if it was up to us. We would support you with anything you need. And he was dumbfounded that I used their law books, their law, we call it the Old Testament, they call it the law, to use it as my litmus test for what what national boundaries should be. But modern day Israel is not like that. They're not walking around saying, hey, we need this. They try to get along, and you'll see it later, but they have all these people living in there. A ton of different people, ton of different groups, and you can't go here and you can't go there. It's very segregated, but they're trying to make it work the best way they can. But it would be like, all right, driving down 935, and then when you get down there to the corner, well, if you have this kind of license plate, you can't go past because that's still Mexico or that's Canada over there. I mean, like it's definitely a different deal. We drive around our borders. Any state, where Americans go where you want to. It's not all that way here. This is Caesarea Philippi. This is this is all the same day, and it was amazing. Not only was it gorgeous, of course, and a ton of water in a dry area, but it was neat. There's a lot of history that happened here. This is the spring going to the town of Hermon back in the Old Testament. The water was gorgeous and clear and pretty. I drank it. I drank a bunch of it before. Saw a sign that said you're not supposed to drink it, but it was fine. So remember how I said everything's so close. So we're sitting there. This is Caesarea Philippi. This is where they went, Christ and his disciples. This is the place where Christ told Peter, upon this rock, I will build my church. Right on the other side of this is the road to Damascus.
Right in the corner, right where that kind of goes in there, you can barely kind of see it. Right in those trees, that's the road that heads to Damascus.
Right. And this is the headwaters of the Jordan River. It's just a lot of things. It's all, all the different years of the Bible, it all kind of stacks up. Different things have happened. So right here in the middle is where we're talking about. Go one more, I think. That's a mosaic floor. One more. Right there. So when he said, I will build my rock and hell will not prevail against it, this is what he was talking about. This is pagan worship. Started from Alexander the Great. They said, hey, we're going to start worshiping the god of Pan. So this was a site for pagan worship, and they were actually sacrificing humans at the time of Christ in this place. So he took Peter there, and he says, all right, Peter, I'm going to start the church. And what that meant was and I'll just say it right now because we have we're going to see a bunch of stuff here in a minute. There's all different religions. There's all different people that go there and look. The Catholics believe that Peter was the first pope and can forgive people of their sins because of this verse. Upon you, my rock, I will build my church. What he meant was, and what the New Testament says very clearly, is that a people group will not receive the Holy Spirit until Peter first preaches or speaks to them. And then through Peter's ministry, people groups, the Jews at Pentecost, no Holy Spirit until Peter preached at the day of Pentecost. Then no Gentile till Cornelius. That's what he meant. He didn't mean that Peter was going to be a venerated saint for the rest of eternity, but this was a specific place that he brought him to say, I'm going to build my church. And he had them on this road, and it was a place of idol worship. So they were, the disciples were already like, oh, what are we doing here in the first place? And he said, hey, this is what we're going to do.
So that is what it looked like. But all in that mountain, you could see what was left, where all up in the top, there was places where they would put idols and stuff. There were just carvings all in that mountain. And that one on the far left, that building on the far left, that mosaic floor is what is left of that part of that building. And it goes into a cave, and that's where they would do all the sacrifices.
They had a old hand pump like you see, years ago. That was a hand pump. That's where I got filled my water bottles and drank all that water. There's the military presence I was talking about up in that area. All right, Capernaum. This is neat. This is nicknamed the town of Jesus because his ministry on earth here on the Sea of Galilee was focused in it. He spent 75% of his ministry in the area of Galilee. These are some ruins. Off to the right, you're going to see a church that the Catholics built over Peter's house. These are ruins from that time, from first century. Those are first century ruins. This is the church built over.
Peter, that's supposedly Peter's house.
Supposedly Peter's house. Right. So the different people, whoever spent the money and paid for the church and pays to maintain it, they have authority over it. And several times you could go in somewhere unless they had mass or something else going on. This is the synagogue in Capernaum where Jesus taught a lot. It's built on top of the ruins, like I said earlier. This is Magdala, where Mary's from, very close, just right down the Sea of Galilee. This was a fishing community. You'll see how they had this was their little synagogue in Magdala, so there wasn't a lot of people. 275 people at the time of Jesus' life in Nazareth. Nazareth was really tiny. The ruins that I showed you earlier, there's a lot more people there now, and it's a Muslim city now. So these are the cleaning stations, because they fished so much out of the Sea of Galilee, and they sold them, because right there on past that deal, the road that we drove on was the old Roman road, and you can tell there was a lot of, it could be here, it could be there, it could be here, but some things like this road, so there was all a big mountain right behind you, and then the Sea of Galilee. So the road was in that natural flat spot. So you could tell that the highway that we drove on was the old Roman road. This was a neat church. We went to a lot of churches, of course. This is a church of the women. We were able to sing and praise God in these different places.
And this was really neat. Each one of those pillars had a prominent woman that had been in the Bible, had played some part. And so there may have been 12 of them. I don't know. I can't remember. But anyways, there was one for just different people. And the really cool thing is they left one blank for every woman to put her own name on. And I thought that was really, really neat.
This is neat. This was, you kind of went down, and this is original flooring. And then they built this building around it. But this was all devoted to the hem of the garment, the woman that had so much faith that she said, if I could just touch the hem of his garden. She was the one that was bleeding for 12 years. I thought that was neat. They did an old-fashioned boat up there at the front.
That's where they preach from.
This is our boat ride on the Sea of Galilee. We never got on it except for this one day. We were around it all the time. Again, because there's so many different people that visit, they have the Israeli flag when they pull it up, and then they have this other place to hook flags, and they have a ton of flags from all over the world, and whichever group they have on there, they'll fly their flag while they're on the trip. Thought that was pretty neat. They tried to fish. They talked to us about things that happened there, and how fishing was, obviously the main source of income. They had a guy that tried to fish. His name was Peter. He took a cast net out and threw it out. It was pretty neat. This is the Beatitudes.
And by the way, Magdala, that was day 2. So you can see how much stuff we were seeing in a day. So this is the beginning. That boat ride is the beginning of day 3.
Oh, it was gorgeous. Wasn't nothing like, the weather was great. Nothing like here now, but it was end of May, 1st of June, and it was kind of comparable to here, probably a little bit cooler.
When we went to the
but
desert
the evenings
stuff,
would get cool. It would cool down in the evenings. You never had to wear she wore a jacket, but she's cold all the time sometimes. This is the Church of Fishes and Loaves, and this circle deal out here, you'll see a better picture beforehand. That's it. That's where they would baptize somebody before they went into the church, or not baptized, but like purification before they could enter. This was neat. You see a lot of things, and you see beautiful things while you're over there, but this guy was actually, there was, I think, 4 of them, and they had an area they would work on for 8 hours. It was this big, and they were repairing the mosaic floor while they were in there.
So this is where he did, that is where he did the, he multiplied the fish and the loaves. Mm-hmm. That's what that place was.
So big events in the New Testament and the Old Testament, they would have, but mainly the New Testament, they would build a church. They would build some kind of monument for those big events. This is Bet Shan National Park. This is probably in the entire country. This is probably the best ruins, the best complete set of ruins in the entire country, and only what did he say? 18 or 22% of it has been excavated. They have to stop excavating because if they continued, there wouldn't be anywhere to put anything new. But there's just a bunch of pictures of
This, so that up there at the top, that's where there was an not a synagogue but a temple. There's a temple up there. So this is a Roman city. So you'll see obviously a lot of Roman influence. That was
all right,
a really
that
cool
right
road.
there. So this was neat. All of this area from these columns back, that would have been the marketplace, and it was all mosaic. So like I said, you'd see old ancient pieces here and there, but this is the most complete. That wide city would have been that place of commerce, and then so you could see the Roman architecture. So, different people had it, controlled in different times. Roman, and then this black stuff, the smaller stuff, is either Muslim or Byzantine. Everything Rome did was big and better, obviously. And then Byzantine and Muslim stuff was a lot. They didn't have the money or the resources.
And now this stuff isn't replica. And you'll see, well, if you want to see more pictures of this place, let me know, because I've got like 20,000.
Yeah, this is
but there
this
was
is
an
all
earthquake.
original stuff, and this is, like I said, this is the best ruins in all of Israel.
The amphitheater.
Another not Colosseum, another theater. This is a bathhouse. Keep going, because we've got a better one coming up in Masada. But bathing, central to all Roman life. Their bathhouses were where it was at. Keep going. Now we're into Jerusalem. Anytime you see the big dome, the big gold dome, that's called the Dome of the Rock. That is the site of the Jewish temple. It's where it's supposed to be. But obviously, they don't have it controlled. This is going into Israel. This grass right here is some of the only grass in all of it, Jerusalem. I mean, it was stone and concrete everywhere. That's the old gate. And I'll show you some more about the difference in different periods, because it's been torn down and rebuilt and everything. Bethlehem. Oh, Danny wants to talk about this.
Okay. Bethlehem. Well, one thing I do want to say is that having a guide was really, really helpful, because we had gotten T-shirts made, and it said, Israel is calling and I must go. And so we were all going to wear our shirts because we were going to take a picture on the Mount of Olives. Well, we come down and our guide's like, oh, no. So we couldn't go. Everybody had to go change clothes. We never got to wear that shirt, because every day we tried to, we were going into Palestinian rule. So if it would have said Jerusalem, if it would have said something else, but it was political when you said Israel, so they said no. We went to a store in Bethlehem. It's, what was it called?
Nissan Brothers.
The Nissan Brothers. And they're the ones who do a bunch of the olive wood stuff. Thomas has a picture of one that was probably 4.5 feet, 5 feet. It was a nativity scene, and it was big. We asked, he said, how much do you think that is? And I said, I don't know, $25,000. And the guy goes, yeah, the shipping on that is $25,000. It was $250,000, but they had carved every bit of it out of olive wood from one tree. But one of the things is that I had been, for a while, been looking for a wedding ring, another one, because mine had broke. I had 3 parts and I was down to the last one. And so I've been wanting something. Well, they have in this store, they have things that you can purchase that have been excavated for tourism. So they keep 95% of it, the state does, but they allow 5% of it to be sent out for that. So this is a bronze ring that was excavated anywhere from the 1st to the 3rd century in Bethlehem. So it's between 2,000 and 1,700 years old. And so I was really excited about getting a part of Israel. It was just a really neat day. So he's like, you're going to put that in? I was like, yeah.
So this is entering the church. This is the Church of the Nativity. 5 different churches, and a resolution from 1800s still says this denomination has control during these times and this time and this time. So 5 different denominations have this, and then next door there's a Catholic church, which only they have. But this is the Church of Nativity. So everything is, it's ugly. This church to me is ugly and gaudy. They have red out all the time because it's a nativity and it's about Christmas and Christ's birth. This is the site where they think Christ was born.
What I was going to say is during COVID, there was tourism just basically stopped. So guides would come and kind of refresh themselves, and they were cleaning stuff. So during COVID is when they actually found that mosaic behind whatever was up there. And then
you can't really see them very good, but there's amazing paintings on all the columns.
And they found all of that during COVID.
And where this guy is standing is wood, and this is over a drop original mosaic. And the mosaic is so beautiful that they built a wood deal for all the people walking so they wouldn't tear it up. Yep, there's some stuff. See the nativity. That's where you go down and to see the manger. Here's a bunch of people. Here's a bunch of pictures.
We need like part 3 of this.
Sorry. We can stop anytime, but that's where they think Christ was born. There was no Holy Spirit in these places. A lot of these things were just commercialized, and you saw a bunch of people worshiping the site instead of, like we were just there to see something. Now this was cool. This is where the Bible was translated into Latin for the first time, the Vulgate. The guy spent 40 years underground in a cave doing it. Jerome. Oh, this is the shepherd's field. I do want to say this. This is right next to Bethlehem. This is where the angel appeared to the shepherds. And these shepherds were not raising any other livestock for any other purpose but sacrificial lambs. So when the angel came and told them that the lamb was born, they were actually shepherds that were raising sacrificial sheep. And that's Boaz's country. Ruth, Naomi, Boaz, he owned all that back in the Old Testament. That's Bethany, where he raised Lazarus. It's just another church this is called the Shepherd's Church. It's a garden of Gethsemane. That's inside the garden.
It was gorgeous. This was one of my favorite places.
All those old olive trees. That's what an olive tree looks like. Better picture. There was a fire going on outside in Jerusalem at the time, so super smoky. Beautiful flowers. It's a neat place. Probably the coolest church by far that we were there. This is a church of Agni. Up front, they have a rock where supposedly Christ laid and prayed the night before his crucifixion. They use purple and blues and all that to show despair. That's the Jerusalem wall. These are all a bunch of Jewish graves, and then the Muslim graves are over there, because in the Bible it says right up there, that spot right there is where Christ is going to re-enter the city. So even though they don't believe in him, they walled over the gates, and then they put nothing but Muslim graves out in front of there so no Jew would go past.
They're keeping him out.
Yeah, going to keep him out with a walled up gate and some graves.
And they put rocks on these. Okay.
That's the tour group there. Masada, this is where 697 people fled Rome. Jews went up there. They were up there for 3.5 years. Then they drew, that's a Roman camp that they had all camped around to kill them. And they drew straws, said who was going to kill. So each person would draw straws, and if you drew your straw, you would go kill your family, and then somebody would kill you, and they went all the way. And only one woman and 5 kids survived. Some man didn't go kill his family like they'd all agreed. Herod's palace on top of Masada, a replica, obviously. But that's Masada. That's where I wanted to go. It wasn't even on the tour, but they took me there.
Now this day was kind of hot.
This is southern Israel, and not like the Negev desert, but down around the Dead Sea. Go.
This is how the Romans
Oh, that's
ended
it.
up conquering.
Yeah, that was they built all that. I mean, for horse people, I guess it's cool. They built this entire ramp with horses and chariots, hauling dirt in the back of chariots. That was
Yeah.
a trolley ride to and from.
Gondola.
This is the Dead Sea. Just kind of go through this.
You float.
It was
Obviously.
It was cool. I will say that it was cool. Old city Jerusalem. I do want to get to the southern steps though. Okay, the Roman blocks all had a border around them. They were large. These are big. And then anything built up top, the small blocks, that's going to be the Byzantines or the Muslims or somebody rebuilding it afterwards. Nobody used the money or the time or had the building capabilities as the Romans did. Lions Gate. This is where I entered into the Muslim quarter and got held up. Pools of Bethesda, where Christ healed the cripple.
Walking in the city of Jerusalem is like nothing I've ever experienced. It's,
No.
I mean, it's not very
They built
wide.
it for horse and chariot, so you don't see a pickup driving through. And they've got those little cars and little tractor, 3-wheel tractors. All right, go.
This is the church. This is his scourging site, isn't it, Thomas?
Condemnation, yeah. Just kind of go through the stations of the cross. Quick.
This is going into the church of...
So that's where supposedly they think he was buried. I don't agree. And it was all just, I mean, there was tons of people there. Okay, this right here, this is where Christ, this is one of those sites that we know 100%. And there's another picture coming up, but that's the bottom, glassed off so you could see it.
Caiaphas' house.
This is Caiaphas' house. Go to the next one. That right there is the hole that they dropped Christ through. After he brought him to Caiaphas' house in the middle of the night, they dropped Christ through there, and he had to stay down there all night after being beat on. And then they threw a rope down to him because that walled-off place wasn't there, the glass part. So they pulled him back up through that. So that's where he was, and they pulled him back up through that hole. I thought that was...
It was very intense.
Yeah. This is where I think he was buried, in this area at the Garden Tomb. It was amazing. We had communion. We got to see the little place where we think he went. This little fella's from Scotland, Edinburgh. He's everybody at the Garden Tomb is volunteers. It's the only place in Israel that guides can't guide, is at the Garden Tomb. So they have volunteers that do it. That's supposedly where he was buried. Those sites.
Looking very intently, seeing
Yeah.
he's not there.
Yep. As our communion service.
It was beautiful.
There was an amazing group from Nigeria that were worshiping. It was unbelievable. Go ahead, go through these. We'll see the Western Wall real quick. Wrap it up. That I didn't even go there. Blah blah blah.
He got lost here.
I didn't want to go anyway.
Well, one
Yeah,
thing
that's
you
the
need.
Dome of the Rock. That's the third most holy site to Muslims, behind Mecca and somewhere else. This is where they say that Abraham took his son Ishmael, his oldest son, and sacrificed him. And that is some history that maybe people don't know, is that that's the reason that the Muslims believe that they have right to the Holy Land, is because Ishmael was Abraham's first son, but not in the lineage that Christ wanted, from Sarah. So he was sent away. Now, the covenant and all the promises still apply to him, but he is not the lineage of Christ, and he is not from that deal. So that's where the whole debate is.
And one thing to note is you can come in you can only come in one gate if you are Christian or Jewish or any other religion. You can come in as a Muslim on any of the gates that go around here, but you can go out any gate, but you cannot come in any gate. And Thomas and four ladies found that out.
That's the Wailing Wall, or known as the Western Wall. That's what it's called there. We call it the Wailing Wall. Women on this side, men on this side. A ton of us went up and prayed, and And I just prayed that the Jews would see Christ as the Messiah. These are books they had at the back. And
that was the separating thing. How do I go back?
Yeah, that's a Danny holding up a deal. See, those are Roman blocks, how big they are. Keep going.
They would stick their faces in the Bible, or in the Torah.
Okay, so that right there, that picture was, those are all mikvahs or ceremonial baths. Keep going. Because the southern steps right there, this is where Pentecost happened. This is where Peter preached, and 3,000 people were added to the church. And then what does it say? Then baptized. There's a row of nothing but mikvahs right next to it. So I don't think it was by chance that happened that way. But that is the birthplace of our church, the modern church, is the southern steps right there. That's where it happened. That's where the Holy Spirit fell on mankind for the first time.
All the way to the left, those were little stores, the little shops.
The size of those blocks. This is Qumran. This is where the Dead Sea Scrolls were. Just a replica. And notice how far up those caves are. You know, you're like, how did a sheep get in there? That's how much erosion there's been. Earthquakes and erosion. This is a baptism in the Jordan. That's a guy that went with us. We gave our guide that guitar for his son. Everybody signed it with their verse. That's our guide, George. Amazing Christian, a missionary like no other. He shares the gospel in every group all the time. Jerusalem at night.
I took this. We had to fly out. I had to leave the hotel at midnight, and I took this right before I left. Out their window.
Depends on which way. So because of the spin of the earth, it was quicker going there than it was coming back. I don't know. Danny's flight was like an hour and 10 minutes because that's how long she was awake. Mine was 15 hours, I think, all together, all three, both flights. So, but it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. They had movies. And this was the first plane I'd been on that had the thing that showed you where you were, so you could tell you were over Greenland or over the Pacific or the Atlantic or wherever you were. It was pretty neat. But going there and seeing it, I thought it was going to be all about history. But what it was is that being there where Christ was and being there and seeing all that they did, and the fact that in a city of Jerusalem where there's 1 million people, there's only a little over 100,000 Christians. So Christianity is the minority there, and our guide experiences, not what we would consider, first century persecution by any means. He's not getting killed, but his kids, at school, they go to a Christian school that's 70% Muslim because there's not enough Christians to keep the enrollment up to pay the bills, so they have to let Muslim kids in, and they have money. So, his kids are getting picked on, for being the minority and, things like that. But what it was is going over there and seeing all that, and it was an awakening. It's a spiritual awakening, I guess, is the best way we could describe it. And the fact that thousands and thousands and thousands of people come there every day to see this, to see places where this one guy was, and the fact that in his ministry, only 21 days are recorded in Christ's ministry in the gospel. And those 21 days affected the world for so much. What he did and said affected the world so much that people are still going 2,000 years later. And I would encourage anyone, if you ever get the chance to go with a group, and it's mind blowing. Just seeing it all, and it was a great experience.
Yeah, it was amazing. And again, I just want to say, God really was in that place. I mean, there was places that we felt the Holy Spirit so intently, and then others, like his birthplace, we were like, this isn't it. Because if he was here, you would know it. Because there was places that he was, and we knew it. And we both, we're out of time, but we both had very special moments his was on the Sea of Galilee. Mine was in the Garden of Gethsemane, where God just really met us 100%. And it did. It changed us. And, you know, we don't see the Bible the same anymore. We don't read it the same. Somebody said, you read the Bible in black and white, and you come back from Israel, and it's in color. And there's just truth to that. There just is total truth to that. But anyways, it was a huge blessing, and we could have talked for another 2 hours, but I know everybody.
Sorry for the time frame, but we did try to go quick. Father, I want to come to you this morning. I want to thank you for the fact that we don't live somewhere where we're persecuted at this moment. I want to thank you for the fact that we have the right to get in our pickups and drive around and do what we want and go to our house and do what we want pretty much. I just thank you so much for those freedoms that you've given us. But at the same time, I hope those freedoms don't make us laxed or make us lazy when it comes to the Great Commission and what we're supposed to do. I know that you told us to go out and make disciples of you. And I just ask that you would let each and every one of us in this room go to his work or his place or his sphere of influence, whoever he or she is around that has relationships with people, and that they can see the Christ in us, and that we can make disciples for you. I thank you for this church and this body. I thank you for all you're doing and all you're going to do. In your Son's holy and righteous name, amen.